Hey guys, and welcome to a new video in this C++ tutorial. In this video we're going to talk about the for loop and the while loop we have in C++. So first of all, we're just going to talk about the different kind of loops we have in C++, where we have we have the two entry controlled loops, which is the for loop and the while loop. And then we also have an exit controlled loop, which will exit from the loop when some condition occurs. And it is the do while loop. So we do something in our code while some condition is true, and when that condition is false or doesn't occur anymore, then we go out of this loop. So we'll exit the control loop here. So over here in the entry control here, we have the for loop and the while loop, where for loop is we run through some numbers of iterations. It could be through an array, so we run through all the elements in an array. Or in the while loop here, we can kind of do the same with both these loops, but while loop is just we're doing something with our code while some condition is true. So I'll give you some examples on what we can use the different kind of loops for, and I'll show you some examples in C++ later on. So the for loop here is we have, first of all, we have an initialization here, where we have some number or some other thing we initialize, and then we set up some condition. And while that condition is true, the code here in our for loop will run. And then after every iteration in our for loop, we need to have some kind of update state. So it could be, for example, that we have an integer here, and then while that integer is below some value, this condition will be true, and we will run in a for loop. And after every iteration, we will update that integer. We can, for example, increment the integer. If we, for example, want to run through a whole list, we can have our condition here could be we have an integer I here, and then the condition is the for loop is running until I becomes greater than or equal to the size of our vector or array. And then after every iteration, we just increment our integer, so we go through all elements in our array. So inside here we can have some code, and we can also have some if conditions. If something occurs inside of our for loops where we can break. So here we have a for loop check, and if some condition is occurring that where we need to break from a for loop, and then we call this a keyword here break, and then we'll go out of the whole for loop, and it doesn't really matter what condition we are in or at what update state or something like that. Then we'll just break out of the for loop if that condition occurred in our code or in some different kind of calculations. So over here to the right, we have an example on how we can set it up in C++. So we have this keyword here for, and then we have initialize some variable here, set it equal to 0 in this case. And then this for loop will run until as long as I is less than 7. And then after every iteration, we just increment the I variable here by 1. And then we just see out the I here, so we will get the numbers from 0 to 6 in this case with this for loop here. And I'm also going to show you some different kind of examples in code and Sublime Text in C++ later in this video. And we can also have the while loop down here, where the code is running inside of the while loop here while some condition is true. And then when that condition is false, or we have some other condition inside of a code that breaks our while loop, it will also go out of scope. So this code inside of these curly brackets here will run until this condition here returns false. So over here we have a code example here where we have an integer I which is equal to 5, and then we run this for loop this while loop here as long as I is greater than 0, and then we just see out or output the I value here, and if after every time we have outputted our I value, we just decrement it by 1. So after one iteration, our I here will be 4, and then after another iteration it will become 3, and then we have a condition set up here that if I becomes equal to 3, we'll just break out of the while loop here before this condition up here returns false. So this is how we can set up for loops and while loops in C++, and how we can use them, and the basic stuff about how we can initialize our variables that we're going to set up for some condition, and how we update our variables to go through a list or for doing something inside our for loop or while loop when we want to do our code more than one time. So what can loops be used for? And we're using loops when like we're like repeating code multiple times, or we want to run some code until some condition occurs. Like it could be like if we have like a program that needs to run all the time, then we have like an infinite while loop that just runs all the time. But like if some errors occur or something like that, like then we can like terminate that while loop, and then it will like terminate our program and return some error or some other different kind of stuff. And we can also use for loops for like searching or looping through containers and other data structures. So let's say we have a vector where we have stored some numbers, and we want to like search a number inside of that container or data structure, or like just loop through it, just sort it. Then we can like just have a for loop running through all the like elements in our container or data structure, and then check if that element is equal to some value that we want to search for, or if we just like want to loop through all our values in our container and probably maybe sum them up to like calculate some kind of average or some other calculations, or for some other like applications. So it can pretty much be used for like everything, and it is used everywhere. So you're going to use a lot of for loops, and probably like a bit more for loops than while loops, but they can both be useful in different kinds of situations. But like for loop is probably the most important one, and you're going to use it many times and all the time, probably like just all the time, like in your code. Like if else statements and for loops are very used concepts in programming in general, and also like just in C++. So it can also be used for different kind of algorithms and math. So I'm also having this algorithms and data structures tutorial in C++. So you can go check them out. The one out up here, and I'll link to it, and you can see like more what you can use C++ for in algorithms and how we can like sort arrays and different kind of stuff. So let's jump into Sublime Texture and see some examples in C++. So we're now jumping into Sublime Texture, and I'm going to show you some different kind of examples on how we can use and set up for loops in C++, and also like different kind of things you can use for loops for, and some other different kind of hints, and also the while loop in the end. So first of all, you're just going to include the IOStream library and the vector include file here, and then we're using the namespace, so we don't have to type std before every standard function we use. And then we have a main function down here where we set up the first for loop here, which is just like the basic for loop that we saw in the slides as well. So in this case here, if I see out this for loop here, it will like we will run from 0 to 7, so it will like terminate, the condition will return false here when I becomes 7, so it will like run through this for loop 6 times, and after every iteration we increment I by 1. So in this case here, we'll just print out the numbers from 0 to 6. As we can see down here, we get like 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we'll just like we just print out each number like when we're iterating through our for loop here. So we can also like have a vector here, for example, that we talked about. Like we can have a vector here that is like containing the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we can use a shortened notation for our for loop here if you just want to like run through the whole vector here, and we don't need to like go into the middle of the vector, for example, as we can do up here, where we just specify our I or our initialization here to some other value than 0. So here we just run from like 0 to the length of this number here, and then we like just run through all the elements in our container. It could also be like array or some other data structures that we just run through, but in this case, an example, we're running through a vector that contains integers, and we use this notation here where we have a for loop, and then we have this auto keyword here, which is like gives an auto data type to the I variable here, because we could also like run through like a vector here of strings or like floating points or something like that. So this auto keyword will just like take, so it will see like these values as integers. So this will actually like be an integer I that is running through all the numbers in the vector up here. So I'll just comment the first one out up here, and then see what we can see if we just run through all the for loop here and just see out all the numbers inside of our vector here. So we can see that indeed we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in our vector here that gets output down here with the short notation of the for loop, where we're just like iterating through all the elements in our vector. So we can also have like nested for loops in C++, where we just like have for loops inside of for loops. So then we can use like, for example, matrices where we are like storing elements rows and by rows and columns. So first of all, here we just have like some integer I again. It can be, it is in this case like rows, and the j integer here, like a variable, is the column. So we run through, first of all we just run through the first column here. So this will be a 0 in the start. So this is the first row we run through, and then we have our nested for loop here that run through all the columns in the first row of the matrix. And then after the 3 iterations here, we have been through the 3 rows here, like the 3 columns here in our first row. Then we go to the next row here in our for loop, in the outer for loop here, and then we run through all the columns here again in the second row, and then in the end we run through the third row and all the columns again. So we just go through all the the rows and columns one by one. So if you see out this one as well, we can see that we output our matrix here to terminal here. So we can use this for different kind of stuff, like matrices where we're like storing some kind of tables or doing some mathematic operations, and also a lot of other cool stuff with images where we have like we're actually storing images as matrices where we just like store the pixel values in an array like this. So this could actually be an image where each element in the matrix just like corresponds to a pixel value. So it can be used for a lot of different kind of stuff, and it's also very important. So we also have the while loop here, where we had this example here in the slides where we just have some integer 5, and the while loop is then running until like the integer 5 here becomes like less than or like equal to 0. So in this case here, if we just print this out, I'll just comment this out up here. So if we run this now here, we can see that we get 5, 4 because this condition won't return false, because we set up the condition down here that if I becomes equal to 3, we will just break out the while loop here, and we don't really care about this condition anymore because like some error or some other condition occurred where we want to break out of a for loop, and then we will only print the 2 first values here, which is 5 and 4, because we start with I equal to 5. We can also have this do while loop where we run some block of code while some condition is true. So in this case here, we just have some test variable here which is equal to 0, and then we just output the test value here. We just output hello here, and then increment our test variable here. And then this block of code here in the do brackets here, or in the do scope here, it will run like hello like 4 times, because while this condition down here is true, it will just print out hello. So in this case here, we can see that it prints it out like 4 times. So this is like how we can use do while loops, and they're not really like that used so much, where we will probably like prefer the while loop up here, but in some different kind of cases, like we want to do our do while loop here, because then for the while loop up here, it only runs the code if this condition is true, but down here it will first run the first block of code here 1 time, and then it will check if this condition is true or false, and then it will like keep on doing this do while loop here. So that's pretty much it for this video, guys. We've been over the basics of the for loops and the while loops in C++, and they're pretty useful for different kind of purposes and different kind of situations, where like the for loop is probably the most used one and can be used for a lot of different kind of things. So thank you guys for watching this video, and remember to hit the subscribe button and bell notification on the video, and also like this video if you like the content and you want more in the future. As I mentioned earlier in the video, I'm also doing this algorithm data structure tutorial in C++. If you're interested in that, I'll link to one of them, one up here. And I'm also doing this computer vision tutorial where we are using a lot of these for loops, like from running through all the pixel values in an image and doing some different kind of operations with for loops, which is also like pretty interesting and really like practical example of what we can use for loops to. So you can go check one of them out, or else I'll just see you in the next video, guys. Bye for now.